Welcome back to another Julian Aquatics video. Today we're going to be working with orchids and we're going to try and mount them to this basket that is actually a fry basket with the handle broken off. So it's kind of recycled. We will need an orchid, obviously. Something to hold the media in, which for me it's going to be this basket. And behind me I have a piece of cedar board that I plan on cutting down, and that's what this is going to mount to, along with, you'll need some screws. I think that's all you'll need. Obviously you'll need the substrate for your orchids, so make sure you have that available. I only have 3. I don't know if I'm going to mount the 4th orchid, but at least 3 of them will get mounted. So I'm going to switch over to the saw cam and we will get chopping, because this piece of wood needs to be cut down to size. But first I'm going to measure the basket so that I know I have the right size board to mount this to. So for this project I measured out about 11 inches, and that's how tall I guess these platforms are going to be. And what I'm going to do is cut one and then basically use that as the template for the rest. So enjoy the time lapse. Here's the 6 pieces I was able to cut out of that and what I needed, and a quick little mock-up of what the basket is going to look like on top of this. And I will turn it over, and then this is how I'm going to combine both of these 2 boards, is just by gluing a 1x2 to the back vertically. And you'll see that. Oh, it's cropped out. I didn't film this right. You'll see it probably in the next clip. The what I'm talking. Oh nope, there I did it. I did it right. There we go. Look at that. That's what I plan on doing. So let's cut to the next scene. Look at that. It's the next scene, and we're indoors. I'm gonna glue all these boards together with wood glue, and if you want to speed things up, you can use super glue, and I'll use a mixture of both, and screws. You're going to use screws, and make sure you have enough, because I ran out and it's not pretty, but no one's going to see the back, so use what you got, like I did. I'm not sure if it needs to be said, but here I am beginning the glue process. Make sure you apply enough glue. The screws are definitely going to hold everything together, but this is just extra, and I'm being extra. I probably could have just done this with screws, but this is the process of the first one. I'll show you that in its entirety, and then you're going to see a time lapse. Make sure you thoroughly think this process through, because you definitely have to think as if you had multiple hands. So make sure you use clamps while it's gluing together. super glue wasn't fast enough, so make sure you have the right. Yeah, there I am realizing I don't have wide enough clamps. Just one clamp. So I did run out of the regular screws that I had, so I had these other ones that were just a little bit longer, so they're not all the way in. Well, except for that one. So here they are, completed, and we'll just ignore the happy little accident that happened back here by running out of screws. But overall, they look great, and they all look pretty uniform, I think. And with the basket over them, they look like this. On to the next scene. The next step on this project is removing the nursery substrate from the planters and exposing the roots. There are easy ways to do this. Basically just cut the dead roots out, remove all the old substrate or as much as you can, and that's it from my understanding. I'm not an expert, so don't ask me questions that you can Google. I mean, you can for YouTube comments and stuff, you know, the algorithm, but I think for the most part, the internet itself does a good job of providing enough information if you are interested in the nuances of repotting an orchid. But this is purely a aesthetics video, not an educational one. I mean, I'm teaching you how to make an aesthetic thing, but I'm not necessarily going over the rules and structure of what I'm doing, because 9 times out of 10, I just wing it. So enjoy the time lapse. Here I am marking off where I need to apply the screws to hold the basket in place. I do recommend using washers, which I do not have currently. So I might go back and redo this part and then just remove the screws and put washers when I put the screws back in. That way it's held in place more. But the screws are basically what are going to hold your basket in place. You can also use zip ties, but you have to drill more holes into this, and I'm trying not to do that. The next step is weaving the loose roots through the basket. And before I do that, I'm going to strap the orchid into the basket so that it's in place and it won't move. The roots are a little bit more manageable, but this step is critical so that your orchid is in place while you work on it. You can use bonsai wire, twist ties from bread bags, or even zip ties. So choose what you have available to you. So for this next part, you're going to need some plastic wrap or something to put behind the basket so the fine substrate doesn't go through it. For this, I recommend going with a coarse substrate that has large chunks because the smaller pieces of substrate will fall through. And as you can see, it kind of worked, but you still lose some of the substrate when you go vertical. After you're done with the substrate comes probably the more difficult part of this project, the flip. So first place the board over the basket and flip it over. You're going to have to make sure that the substrate isn't lifting the basket up, because it will, and it'll get in the way of screwing things in. So if there is substrate that's stuck between the basket and the wood, make sure that's removed. Maybe give it a little shake to shake the substrate into place, but just make sure the basket is flat. I pre-drilled holes for the screws, so it makes it a little bit easier for me to screw these in, but I'm going corner to corner. That way there's equal pressure on each corner as I'm installing things. So now that it's mounted to the substrate basket, the next step is to add some screws to the top here, and we're going to add some sphagnum moss to kind of keep things moist. So next scene. This process is pretty simple. You don't really have to overthink it, and it's a process that has been done a lot on YouTube. You're going to take your moss, your sphagnum moss, and you're just going to tuck it in between the roots and the basket. You're going to use nylon thread, tie it to the basket, and basically just loop across each time you apply more moss. So I applied a pretty hefty amount for this, I think. Probably could have done less, but you're going to have to do some work to actually make it work, because I did not have an easy time threading the thread through each anchor point on the basket that I use. So you kind of do have to do some pre-planning, use a needle, and just kind of let the plant talk to you as you tuck it in with sphagnum moss. Off camera, I went ahead and added sphagnum moss to the rest of the orchids. So now they're all ready for the next step, which is giving them a little bit of water. So we're going to moisten the substrate so that it has something to start off. And here they are, hanging right above an aquarium, hopefully with enough light and not too much light, because orchids are finicky like that. But here they are, hanging around. And that's the whole project. I thank you for sticking around and watching the whole thing. Let's talk about a few things that you could do if you're inspired. There's chicken wire that you can use to make a basket. Obviously, you can recycle wood. Cedar is what is recommended for high moisture environments, so that's what I went with here. It's not always going to be wet, but cedar is apparently good for that somehow. I don't know. If you want to Google it, Google it. Uh, you will need to water it a little bit more than you normally do, because obviously the roots are exposed and the substrate itself isn't designed for moisture retention in the vertical position. Also, make sure you place them in the right environment so that they thrive. If you are inspired by this project, then let me know in the comments and maybe show me a picture or something. You know, hit me up on Instagram and show me what you made. I would love to see it. Uh, Orchids are a very versatile plant that you can do a lot with when it comes to mounting. So I would love to see the different ideas that people have. I'm constantly looking for new ways to mount orchids. Considering my local grocery store sells orchids at a discount when they lose their flowers. So it's really fun to um, be surprised by the flowers that come out when they rebloom. But all of these orchids I got for $3 each. So it was a great deal. I couldn't pass it up. And now this project overall cost me like $10 because I already had the substrate, I already had the moss, I already had the little basket. The only thing I had to buy was the cedar planks to cut down. But if you already have cedar planks or can find free cedar planks or cedar driftwood, I recommend going that way. But that's the project. I hope you liked it. Like and subscribe, and show the algorithm who's boss. Peace.